A very warm good morning to one and all. We are really pleased to welcome you to the fourth day of AICT sponsored short term training program on paradigm shift in the assessment and evaluation practices of engineering graduates. Today, the sessions are focused on NAC accreditation and preparation. Now, I welcome Mr. Jason C.S., Assistant Professor from Electronics and Communication Engineering Department, to introduce and welcome the resource person.
Today, we have an eminent speaker, Dr. G. Sandilkumar. He is popularly known as GS. He is an academician, an academic auditor, and a curriculum designer. He completed his MSc in Applied Electronics from Bharathiar University, Coimbatore. Also received his MPhil and PhD in Electronics from Bharathiar University, Coimbatore itself. He is now the principal of Aditya College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore. He served as a faculty in the Department of Electronics, Sri Ramakrishna College of Arts and Science, formerly known as SNR Sons College, Coimbatore, from 1997 to 2019, and he was HOD from 2011 onwards for the same department. He has published two books, Embedded System with Digital Image Processing and Encyclopedia of Computers. He is an editorial board member of various journals and has published research publications and in international journals and conference proceedings. He is a member of Board of Studies for more than 4 colleges. He also performed as a resource person for various workshops in DSP, VLSI, and many more. He is a recognized supervisor for doctoral degrees in electronics under Bharathiar University and currently guiding 4 PhD scholars and guided 8 MPhil scholars successfully. His skill set includes implementation knowledge in outcome-based education through curriculum design, teaching, learning, and assessment process. Profound knowledge in electronics field and can assimilate the skill for solving real-time day-to-day problems. I welcome you, sir, for the session. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, and happy to be associated with Amal Jyoti College of Engineering on the 6th-day IACT sponsored STTP on paradigm shift in assessment and evaluation practices for engineering graduates. And today's topic, what we have got is NAC accreditation and preparation. Right. In this thing, first, why NAC and what made us to go for NAC? NAC, whenever we say NAC, NAC is for quality. Quality is never an accident. It is always the result of intelligent effort. Whenever we say a nation is to be a quality nation, that depends on the quality of the citizens, and the quality of citizens are analyzed by the quality of education what they get. So quality of education plays a major role in making making the citizens of a country to a profoundful, socially committed, and economically reliable. So NAC starts with the 7 steps of quality. The 7 steps for quality of NAC goes in this way: as quest for excellence, understanding the concepts, action orientation, learner-centric approach, innovations for changes, training to build competencies, and year-round activities. The quest for excellence, whenever we say the excellence, when we say excellence, excellence should be there in any field, on all the fields, to make us to fight with the global competences. And understanding the concept is understanding how higher education institutions should work and how they must prepare themselves to build a very good quality graduates of our country. And action orientation, whenever there happens something in the society, and the graduates, the quality graduates what we have produced should be very capable for solving that particular socially, economically problems that are available. And as you all aware that OBE plays a major role in today's education sector, where the entire process of teaching has shifted from teacher centric to learner centric. It's not what we teach the students, it's what the students learn from us. So it becomes, nowadays it becomes, an entire shift becomes learner centric. And whenever there occurs a change, obviously you can say, you can find the changes now itself due to this COVID-19 pandemic, which made all of us to shift towards digital. The entire teaching learning process has shifted its methods to digital. So whenever there occurs a change, maybe a forced change, or we may innovate something for a new change. That's what things happen here. And competencies, compete with all the international universities to cope up their standards and make our students competent with the students of, students studied in from universities of other countries or in the world. And NACS, the last quality what NACS expect is a year-round activity, bringing up, analyzing, assessing to get the quality of education to a higher level. As you all aware that NAC was established by University Grants Commission during the year 1986 with its headquarters at Bangalore. During the National Policy of Education 1986, they are addressed about the issues in the quality of higher education, and they made it a compulsory body for accrediting all the higher education institutions in India. That's how the NAC has brought up. The NAC headquarters is at Bangalore. And when we compare about the education sectors or education throughout the world, the entire world, the function of the higher education institutions are in a dynamic environment. So there is no exception for our country. So that we should have a very dynamic changes, and we should accept all the new challenges, and we should go for new innovations. That with that only we can make the higher education in our country, which provides a quality of education to the younger generation, or what we can say the future prospects or the future bureaucrats, the politicians, the officers of this country, and making our students with all the core values and make them compatible with all other students or other graduates of this country. The core values of this NAC is mandated as it's contributing to the national development, fostering global competency among the students, inculcating a value system among students, promoting use of technology and quest for excellence. This how the core values of the NAC as performed, and which through which only they will be analyzing as whether our institution, higher education institution, is at what level we are. The benefits of accreditation. Why should we go for accreditation? What does this accreditation makes us? The only thing is this accreditation by NAC will identify our strength. What are the strength of our institution, and where we misses it, where we can say that as in weaknesses, and what are all the opportunities we have, and what are will be the new challenges that will be facing in this country facing here. So this gives us the benefit, one of the benefits, the important benefits of NAC accreditation is to get this SWOT analysis that's called strength, weakness, opportunities, and challenges. The second point, it gives you planning and resource allocation. You can plan how how the execution of this institution goes on, and what are all the challenges that occurs, and how planning is done for each and everything, starting with curriculum design, teaching learning process, research and consultancy, student progression, best practices, all these things, and you can allocate the resources for that. And the third point is with NAC accreditation, with A and A plus or A plus plus accreditation, the funding agency are looking for objective data, and through this NAC accreditation, it is possible for us to grab funds from UGC, MHRD, and all others. And how, as we said, that the um, approach of teaching learn changed from teacher centric to student centric, initiating innovative and modern methods of pedagogy, various tools, something what we used to call as in Google Classrooms or potatoes, or what are the methods we use, Edmodo, or what are all the different methods are there. We are going to use this method to making our teaching learning process as an enjoyable one and an interesting one. And new sense, the next point is the new sense of identity and direction. For example, in the curriculum design or curriculum enrichment to the local society, we can identify what are the needs of the localites around surrounding the institution, and we can make them to give an opportunities for the students so that they learn, which is a new sense of identity and direction. And the next point is reliable information and quality, which is available with respect to the society and prospective employers. By giving them training and placements and giving them skill oriented courses, we can make them that they'll be industry ready students with some, or what we can say is with some futures of solving some problems that affects the society in large. And scope for intra and inter-institutional interactions. For example, when we have an engineering college, or when we have in the same campus, when we have an engineering college as well as an management science students. So the those students who are who are in the engineering higher education institution, who feels to have some interest towards to become an entrepreneur, they can be guided or trained by the management sciences so that they can have a better idea to how to begin a startup. That's the entire nation is looking for. And the NAC, from the NAC initiation in 1992, now it has changed a lot. Now we are working with revised assessment and aggregation framework of NAC, whereas the earlier stage, the entire assessment and accreditation is based on the peer team visit. The peer team visits here and the checks go through all around the facilities, resources, and interact with the students, faculty members, alumni, non-teaching members, and they'll make a judgment and they will write a report on this thing. Now it has explicitly a paradigm shift, making that ICT enabled, objective, transparent, scalable, and robust framework is initiated from 2017 onwards. From quality peer judgment, earlier it was qualitative peer judgment, now it becomes a quantitative indicator, right? Here, before the peer team visits, 30% of the system generated core score should enable us for pre-qualifying state. So the entire process of this is divided into two, where the quantitative metrics will be there for 70% and qualitative metrics will be there for 30%. And the peer team visits here to check, validate only the 30% of qualitative matrices, whereas all the 70% of quantitative matrices will be analyzed online with system-based score generation. So in that 70% of online system generated score validation, if an higher education institute gets 30%, then only the peer team visits the higher education institution. And then the peer team visits the institution and they'll be going around the institutions and they'll be talking and they'll be interacting and they'll check, cross-verify the qualitative metrics of that remaining 30%. And the another thing is the NAC has asked a third party for validating the data what we are given for that accreditation, and they have their own weightages for each and every criteria. There is so many benchmarks are set for universities, autonomous colleges, and affiliated or constituent colleges. Since in universities and autonomous colleges, curriculum design plays a major role, where the affiliated and constituent colleges does not have have the chance of framing the syllabus. Maybe one or two from a particular college, maybe a member of the board of studies of that university course, and introducing several metrics to bring enhanced participation of students and alumni in assessment process. Whenever we say getting the students information or getting the feedback from information, that says the quality of education what the student have received. And similarly, by interacting with alumni, they they will give the status or the quality of education what they have intended or what they have got while they are pursuing their degree under our college. And when we say that how to go for this NAC accreditation, the eligibility criteria for going the NAC accreditation is two batches of students should be graduated, or 6 years of minimum standing of the institution, whichever is earlier. Maybe in case of an arts and science college, two batches of students graduated comes around 3 + 3, 6 years, or 6 years of education in an engineering institution. Right. And the institutions of central government, state government, private, deemed to be universities and institutions are eligible for appearing for NAC assessment and accreditation. And autonomous colleges, constituent colleges, affiliated colleges, which are recognized under UGC, or can go for NAC accreditation. But the distant education units of higher education and offshore campuses, they will not come under this assessment and accreditation. NAC doesn't support accrediting the institutions under offshore campuses or distance education units of higher education institutions. So how this NAC assessment accreditation process goes on? The institution, first we have the steps for this is institution information for quality assessment, successful approval of this one, online uploading of this one, we go for the next one called SSR submission. And if SSR submission, after SSR submission, data validation and verification done, then goes for the pre-qualification state. Then after that pre-qualification state, that comes the peer team visit. And finally, after the peer team visit, finally we get about the assessment outcome. It's other thing. So an institute, which comes under the earlier eligibility criteria, have to first upload the institution information for quality assessment. Right, we'll see that in detail. So after successful IAQA, they have the NAC will verify those things, and then we say yes. When they accept this thing, within the next 45 days, we have to go for submission of SSR, self-study report of our institution, where we have to give the metric data and optional metric selections, where we have the 7 criteria and multiple qualitative and quantitative matrices across them. And after successful submission of SSR and paying 50% of these fees, our SSR will be gone for data validation and verification, or we used to call that as a DVV process by a third party. And after completing this, meanwhile, when the data validation and verification goes, there comes another one stage that's called SSS, Student Satisfaction Survey. And after validation and verification, if there occurs some deviations in this thing, that DVV part will be clarifying with the higher education institutions. And after successful clarifications of that deviations, what the DVV identified, And if it is successfully completed, then it goes for pre-qualification state, where the pre-qualification state, it checks for the system generated score for 30%. If the SSR passes through with 30%, then only peer team visits will be initiated. Once peer team visit is initiated, the higher education institution has to pay the remaining 50% of fees of SSR submission and the peer team visit logistics fees. And the peer team visits maybe depends upon the number of departments or programs available. The peer team visits may be of 2 days, or that may go for 3 days. And next come the assessment outcome. The assessment outcome based on the 70% of quantitative matrices, 30% of the qualitative matrices given by the peer team visit, and the scores obtained by the higher education institution in student satisfaction survey. This is the process of assessment and accreditation of NAC. And this gives you an overall flowchart of how online assessment and accreditation process follow. The very first step is higher education institution registration. The higher education institution should register. Then it is followed by IAQA, inter-institutional quality analysis, and there occurs a check. If IAQA is accepted, the next thing will be SSR submission. And the time duration between IAQA successful submission of IAQA and submission of SSR is 45 days. So whenever an higher education institution goes for NAC accreditation and assessment, before submitting IAQA, make sure that 80% of SSR must have completed. Since we had left only 45 days for uploading our SSR, so before completing IAQA, before submitting IAQA, make sure that 80% of your SSR submission is ready with you. And once you submit your IAQA, if that gets passed, you can go for submitting the SSR. In case if there occurs some failure, some mismatch, again in an year you can submit your IAQA for another 2 times. So what we can say is, by paying the IAQA fees, we can submit the IAQA 3 times in an year. After which will not be able. You have to again wait for an year. Then you have to go for that. And after successful submission of IAQA, after verification, if it is accepted, then we have to go for SSR. And SSR to be submitted within 45 days from accepting IAQA. And after IAQA, then the pre-qualifier state comes in. Pre-qualifier state where we have to get minimum 30% of the system generated score of the quantitative matrices. The entire process is divided into 70% of quantitative matrices and 30% of qualitative matrices. Then the 70% of quantitative matrices, and if we score 30%, then our process moves to the next level called PTV. That's nothing but peer team visits, where the peer team visit process, and in the peer team visit process, they will come and analyze only the 30% of the qualitative matrices, and after successful that, they'll go for the grade declaration process. And after successful completion and grade declaration, if the higher education institution is not satisfied with the outcome of that grade, they can go for appeal process. And if we are very much satisfied with the outcome of that particular accreditation, then yearly we have to upload the AQAR for further processes. This is the first step, higher education institution registration process. There will be a registration form. The registration forms to be filled, and it gives registration form. If the institution is very first is going for cycle 1 very first, then it goes for higher education institution activation of login credential. It creates a login credential for higher education institution, and institutions can access the HCI portal through which we can submit our IAQA. And if I'm going for my second cycle onwards, what happens is the after a registration form, then higher education fills the accreditation information of the previous uh, cycle. The NAC verifies and approves the registration, and again it activates the login credentials, and the higher education institution can go for applying IAQA, uploading IAQA. This is the second next step of IAQA, and fill the IAQA and upload the supportive documents. Whenever we say supportive documents, the documents which we have used for uploading data in NIRF and All India Survey for Higher Education and Atal ranking of institution on innovation achievements, that should be common. That should be the same things what we are uploading here also. The second thing is, after uploading documents, we have to pay the IAQA fees online and submit. Then the next process goes on IAQA verification. After verification, if they found some deviations, then it's the responsibility of the higher education institution for clarifying that. And after successful clarification and submit clarification responses, the IAQA gets accepted by the NAC. In some cases, when the higher education institution, when the NAC is not satisfied with the responses or the clarifications of the higher education institutions, they will reject it. In case of rejection, the higher education can resubmit the IAQA within 1 year. Two more attempts with the same can be supported from NAC. So once I paid my IAQA fees online, and after submitting my IAQA, and if I'm not able to clarify or satisfy the NAC, then I can have 2 more opportunities for uploading, correcting my IAQA and uploading it. If all this thing gets failed, what happens is, again you have to start it from afresh from the beginning. Again we need to pay the IAQA fees. Right. This is how the IAQA submission process goes on. There's a diagram which gives you about IAQA. Institution will be informed within, after submission of IAQA, it takes 15 days for analyzing and clarification with the higher education institution about the deviations or the doubts regarding the IAQA by the NAC, and gives you 2 outputs. You'll get information either that particular IAQA is accepted or not. And before going for submission of the SSR, make sure that all the members of that particular higher education institution, from teaching fraternity, from the principal, IQAC coordinator, teaching fraternity, and non-teaching fraternity, they should know what are all the things that we will be uploading in SSR. And make sure that all know about the basic things what the NAC accepts from them. And all the teaching fraternity should know about the different matrices in the SSR. And data submission be with 2 parts called quantitative and qualitative matrices. And all these quantitative matrices as well as qualitative matrices should have supportive relevant documents. And in some cases, in some places, as we said, the curriculum design, which does not supported by, which is not possible for an affiliated institution for curriculum design, whereas universities and autonomous colleges can go for curriculum designs. There are some matrices that can be omitted, right? And for each and every matrices, standard operating procedure is given, and this will be very much helpful while submitting the SSR as well as during the data verification and validation process, DVV process. After acceptance of IAQA, you have to submit SSR. The SSR consists of 4 parts, where it will have profile of the institution and its extended profile, SSR with qualitative matrices and quantitative matrices, and then executive summaries. All these 4 parts must be completed within 45 days from acceptance of IAQA. So from the date when we get the information that our IAQA is accepted, from that 45 days, within the next 45 days, we are supposed to upload all these informations online. And SSR submission process, a very huge process here. Here we have profile of the institution, and 7 criteria are there. In the SSR, there are 7 criteria, and 7 criteria have more key identifiers. All these things has to be uploaded to the through online, and for each SSR criterion and key identifiers upload, they are specifically given their templates. We are not supposed to variate any templates. All the templates given by the NAC should be used. We should not modify them to our needs or to our thing. So first, we have to make sure that we have to go through the SOPs for all the criterions to be uploaded in SSR, and what are the various templates given by them. And the next one is pay the SSR first installment fees online. That means 50% of the fees has to be paid now. Then followed by selection of non-applicable matrices. The matrices which you can unavail it, you can neglect it, and that has to be given, and you can submit the SSR. While we submitting, the NAC accepts us to give 100% of student data of our institution. The students beginning from first year to the final year, and if we had PGs from first PG to the final PG, all the students data, 100% of data should be given. And here what I wish to inform you all is, whenever we give student data to them, they have a specific format for that, in which they are looking for the mobile numbers and the email IDs. Kindly make sure to give their personal email IDs. Official college generated email IDs, the NAC is not accepting for that. And make sure the mobile numbers what the students are given, or what the numbers what we are giving is accessible and it is working. Out of this 100% student data, they'll be selecting 30% of the student data. For an example, if there are 500 students, if the 30% comes under 500, and they are expecting to get the feedback within 15 days from at least 100 students. 20% of the total students selected 30% of our institution. For an example, if the 30% of my student strength is 500, the NAC accepts that they should get a feedback, student satisfaction survey within 15 days from 100 students. Then only this score will be added for grading. If it fails there, again what happens is, again they'll go for 70%, either they'll go for 70% or what they make is they'll be uh, calling all the students to get the data. And if they are not satisfied, this score will not be added in the final scores. So the student satisfaction survey, the data verification and validity, the bibliometric data collection from InfluBNet are done simultaneously. And after the successful data verification, student satisfaction survey and InfluBNet, the next step goes as the pre-qualifier state. The pre-qualifier state is getting 30% of the system generated score. And next is the peer team visits. The peer team visits for verifying the quality matrices. And after that, the system generated score for the quantitative matrices, the peer team visits grade, and student satisfaction survey, that will be added together and they'll be accredited. And the accreditation will be for another 5 years or 7 years, depends on the cycle of accreditation. And after that accreditation, what happens is either you can go for appeal within a month of declaration of the accreditation, or you can go for reassess. Reassessment is only possible after 1 year to 1 to 3 years. Whenever you say reassessment goes, what happens is it will be possible for us to go for 1 to 3 years. After I am going for 1 year. So the 1 year, the current 1 year can be changed, and the remaining 4 years of my previous IAQA SSR will be the same. You cannot change anything in that. So accepting our accreditation status, if you are very much confident that we should get more accredited values, then we can go for appeal. Otherwise, it's better to go with after 5 years of next cycle for accreditation. And after successful accreditation, the third part we use is post accreditation. Regularly per year, we have to submit annual quality assurance report. This is the major place where IQSC places, and we are doing this thing after successful accreditation, right? And this is how the evaluation framework goes. All the higher education institutions will be evaluated for 1000 marks, whereas the universities, autonomous colleges, and affiliated colleges, where the 7 criteria will be assessed in very different manners, right? The first one comes as the curricular aspects, where the affiliated colleges will have less marks when compared with university and autonomous colleges. Next one is called teaching, learning, and evaluation, whereas teaching and learning evaluation, the autonomous colleges and affiliated colleges have more values, more marks than the university. And research, innovation, and extension, universities will have maximum marks while comparing with autonomous colleges and affiliated colleges. And for all the remaining infrastructure and learning resources, governance, leadership and management, institutional values and best practices, all the higher education institutions like universities, autonomous colleges, and affiliated colleges will have equal weightage, except student support and progression. Whereas in student support and progression, affiliated colleges will have 130 marks, whereas the university and autonomous colleges will have 100 marks. So these are the evaluation framework, how our institution will be evaluated for 1000 marks. But with respect to this only, the entire grading of our institution comes. So the distribution of matrices and key indices across criteria, there are 7 criteria and 34 key indicators, and quality matrices of 38, and quantitative metrics of 99 for universities, 98 for autonomous colleges, and 79 for the affiliated colleges. And the total matrices will be, for an university it becomes 137 matrices, for autonomous colleges it's 136 matrices, and affiliated colleges 121 matrices. This is how the analysis or the assessment of all higher education institution goes. The first criteria will be curricular aspects. Whereas in the curricular aspects, the very first criteria, the first one is called curriculum design and development. Whereas the curriculum design and development is more likely from universities and autonomous colleges. Whereas affiliated colleges will not have the chance for designing and curriculum and development. And the second part, curriculum planning and implementation. Affiliated colleges will have the marks for 20, and the universities and autonomous colleges, the curriculum design and development itself will have the curriculum planning and implementation. And academic flexibility, then curriculum enrichment and feedback system. This feedback system used in curricular aspects is only about the feedback on the curriculum, the design and implementation, planning, academic flexibility. This should get only the feedback from all the stakeholders of the higher education institution: the students, parents, teachers, alumni, industry, and academic experts. So we have to get the feedback from all, and that feedback must be analyzed, and that feedback should be uh, implemented for enhancing the curricular aspects. And this with this marks the first criterion. The whenever we say curriculum design, this thing, major thing is major part we should know is that we should concentrate more on giving them the skill based training and the objective based training, and knowledge for higher education. And for all these things, what we must do is we must get consultation with academic experts, industries, alumni, and other stakeholders within the institutions and outside the institutions for the first key aspect called curriculum design and development. Next one is the planning and implementation, or we used to say the pedagogic methods or pedagogic reports we love, or we used to say that is called lesson plans, how we used to take the classes and how the classes goes on in case of lesson plan and all, where the what are all the supportive measures, what are all the ICT tools that we'll be using. And for an example, if in an engineering college, higher education college and an engineering college, all the students can be given with in-hand practicing or practical oriented training or hands-on training by combining with some of the industry. So the internships that will make them, that will reduce the gap between industry and education institutions. So these are the things comes under curricular planning and implementation. Mere teaching in a classroom will not make them knowledgeable. Where we know that the students are of three types: auditory learners, visual learners, and kinesthetic learners. Based on this thing, you can make sure when you are planning and implementing the teaching learning process, you can make sure that in what way the knowledge gets transferred from the faculty to the students. And academic flexibility. Academic flexibility is freedom of using time frame of the courses, horizontal mobility, interdisciplinary courses, and choice-based implementing choice-based credit system, so that the particular student is multi-dimensional. Multi-dimensional. For an example, a student of commerce background may be interested in a computer software, or may be interested in a computer, or a computer science student may be interested in doing a business. So you can choose for the business oriented subjects from other domains or other departments. So this cross major or interdisciplinary options should be there, so that which makes them to excel in their field of choice, not making them to excel by the fields what we are giving to them, but making them to excel in their field of choice of their own interest. And new programs, introducing new programs which is having latest innovations in them, so that they'll earn and they'll be ready, industry ready for placements. So these are all the few factors that's available in curriculum. And another thing is curriculum enrichment, additional skills, giving them the additional skills, or making them with some knowledges about the climatic changes, environmental education, human rights, human values, professional ethics. For an example, what I can say is all the institutions, technical institutions under KTU of Kerala, they are using for life skills program. It's a very good initiative. So they must know a student, irrespective of becoming a graduate, they should be socially concerned, a value based and ethical graduate. That will be a very good one. So then only we can say we have produced a very good citizen for this country. As you all aware that the 72% of India's population are youth. So these youth will be the future bureaucrats, or maybe the future politicians, or maybe the future rulers of us. So they must be trained well on human values, ethics, socially committed students, citizens. Then only the growth of our nations will be there. And feedback system, getting feedback, particularly on curriculum design, and getting the feedback from the students, alumni, industry people, teachers, and parents, and make the curriculum design to the needs of the industry or needs of the society. Instead of going with an traditional course, traditional program, the needs of the society as well as the industry should be taken care in providing a particular program. These are all things in your criteria 1. Then comes the next criteria is criteria 2, with teaching, learning, and evaluation. So the first criteria is designing the curriculum. We have designed a very good curriculum with all the matrices comprising and checking with all the matrices of NAAC. Now, how to deliver this thing to the students? Teaching, learning, evaluation. The key indicators in teaching, learning, evaluation: student enrollment and profile. The second is called catering to the students' diversity. Teaching, learning process, teacher profile and quality, evaluation process and reforms, student performance and learning outcomes, student satisfaction survey. The student satisfaction survey of this criteria 2 will be taken during the data verification and validation by the NAAC, by directly contacting the students. So autonomous colleges and affiliated colleges, they had a hand of 50 marks that can be easily scored by motivating the students, by explaining the students what does the student satisfaction survey in NAAC means, what is the thing they are expecting from the students to give, and what impact that the student satisfaction survey will do on the NAAC scoring of their own institution. Let me explain. And it's not possible for the institution to keep track on the mail ID or the mobile number of the students to whether they got the information from a NAAC regarding the student satisfaction survey. Instead, what we can do is we can train them. we can inform them, we can motivate them that these are all the things that a student satisfaction survey will be asking. You can get the templates in the website, what type of questions they will be asked, and you can motivate that. These are all the ways how our institution are excelling by giving the teaching, learning, and evaluation process to the students for their better understanding, for their better enjoyable learning in the institution. And you should make sure that based on this outcome-based education, you should make sure that they are in learner-centric process, not teacher-centric process. So the first one comes with student enrollment and profile. A clear-cut policy should be defined that this is how the admissions into that higher education will be done with respect to the regulatory government and regulatory bodies to which the higher education institution is affiliated with. And the institution has to do periodic reviews of its enrollment profile, and outcomes are to be used for improvement. For an example, if there is an institution where the institution gets only the students from rural students are very good students, are intelligent students, but in some cases, an example, it doesn't mean that to hurt anyone. It's an example. If the students of an institution, rural background students are very less in communication with the peer students are to them. Others, where what we can do is we can have a periodic review that from this particular uh, course or for this particular institution, for our institution that we are getting from the rural students, so that we can ask the English department to have a bridge course before they are entering into the academic schedule. Before they are entering into the academic schedule, we can give them an communicative English training, so that this will help them this will uplift their employability. And all the admission policy should be transparent, and it should be catering to the different socio-economic, geographical, cultural, and educational backgrounds. The institution has to make this thing that uh, all these things for student enrollment and profile. And diversity, the needs of students from diverse backgrounds and including backward communities from different communities available and different localities. The institution learning levels of the student, where this comes another important thing. Whenever we analyze the students, whenever we conduct an examination, we can easily identify the slow learners. The slow learners, in the sense, they'll be little behind for grasping a topic or knowledge when compared with other students. So what we have to do is we have to give much care for these slow learners and differently able students. We cannot say that we won't admit differently able students. It's not the case. As per the regulatory bodies, we are supposed to. In that case, slow learners and differently able learners should be given extra care. There comes our important thing called mentoring comes here. And if that case, and most of the institutions, I'm saying most of the institutions are taking much care about the slow learners. In that cases, when we are giving much concern for the slow learners, we are neglecting the advanced learners or the fast learners. In that cases, what we can do is we can make the fast learners to learn beyond the syllabus, beyond their curriculum. We can make them to learn something beyond their curriculum by providing an tutor for them to make them to self-study or help. We can appoint a tutor for they can go with doing MOOC courses from NPTEL or Coursera or Swayam or some other courses, so that their requirements are also catered by the faculty members. Whenever I give much concentration for the slow learners, that shouldn't the advanced learners should not feel that they are left off. and there should be an excellent academic ambience inside the institution. And teaching learner process, as we all know, it's nowadays it's a learner centric only. It's not students teacher centric, it's learner centric. And another thing is, all the institutions, most of the institutions are now the technology supports called learning management system, so that if a student misses a classes, for an example, I'm taking a class and I'll upload the video or the consent study materials in the Google Classroom or whatever the LMS system we use, so that the students, if he misses a class, he can connect it with us. And learning and making sure that the learning environment is giving much opportunity for creativity and critical thinking. Creativity and critical thinking. And all the teachers should use all the digital resources available. And all the latest technology supports teaching learning. And the next one is called teacher profile and quality, where we should fill up the positions as for the UGC or state government or central government or AICTE norms, and they should have well qualified faculty members, and the institution should recognize the development and the teaching ability of the faculty members. Frequent faculty development programs to be conducted to uplift the latest trends to the faculty members. And the institution must take care of improvement of the faculty members by all means. And evaluation process, how the academic calendar, we should form the academic calendar. Based on the academic calendar, we can conduct the examinations and evaluation, and that should be transparent, that should be secured and technology based. And since we all are aware and we are all using for outcome-based education, this examination should test with the program specific outcomes and course outcomes. And the institution should have an effective mechanism for addressing the grievance of the students, maybe in case of revaluation, or maybe in case of some questions which comes out of the syllabus and all those things. For each and every thing, now the entire education sector is moving towards something called LOCF, Learning Outcome Based Curriculum Framework. So we should take care of the learning outcomes and make sure that each and every learner will have the outcomes what we specified in our courses, each and every student. And that's the very big issue that we should identify. Next thing is student feedback survey and student satisfaction survey. This is feedback regarding the total quality of teaching learning process will be done. That will be done only by the NAC directly with the students, and it gives, this is the direct indicator of effectiveness of teaching learning in the institution. That's what the NAC feels so. Student satisfaction survey is a direct indicator of effectiveness of teaching learning in the institution. The next criteria is research, innovation, and extension. The research, innovation, and extension, where the university have much values in this thing, comparing with autonomous colleges and affiliated colleges. And they have different key aspects are promotion of research and the institution research facilities focuses that for getting projects from UGC, AICTE, or any other recognized agencies, and if possible, the management can give some seed money for doing some research works under faculty. And the institution should encourage research culture and giving due recognition and incentives for the researchers, research supervisors, and research with the citation index, impact factor, H index, SGR index, and all those Web of Sciences, all those values. And all the higher education institutions should have an official code of ethics to check malpractices and plagiarism in research, which is a very uh, huge hurdle in the research field occurs is malpractices and plagiarism in the research. Next, research mobilization for mobilizing fund or consulting, all those things. Here, what we can say is the placement department of the higher education institution plays a major role. The placement department can go for an industry and get the placements. Meanwhile, the placement department can go to an industry and ask, sir, is there any problem unsolved here, so that we can use our students for solving their problems. That will give an bridge between the students of industry and education. So if they are given with some problems that is available in the available with the industry, which they feel that they are not having much time for focusing on that, or which they feel that they are doesn't have the manpower for that, where the placement departments can plays a major role getting such kind of problems from the industry and giving it to the students and finding a solutions with help of the learned experienced faculty members. And this also will help us to get the resource consultancy charges from that particular industry. And giving and another important thing is establishing an incubation center, other initiatives for creating and transfer of knowledge. For an example, one student or of any higher education institution may have an idea of development, but due to his economic background, he will not be able that to build a given startup. In that cases, the incubation cell of the college can use his knowledge and develop a particular product or a process that can be patented. Or all the students should be given an awareness of intellectual property rights, so that their knowledge is, their process, their hard work doesn't goes in vain, or somebody else is taking the fruit out of their hard work and all. So institution can conduct workshops and seminars on intellectual property rights and industry academia innovative practice. That's what I said. By connecting an industry, by getting some problems of the industry and solving it with the solving by the students with the help of the learned faculty members, and that can be used. And the awards won by the teachers, students, and research scholars in the innovation, it can be appreciated. That will also make you to get good scores in this thing. And another thing is research publication and awards. By quality research publication in SJ, science center, SCA index journals, or UGC CARE journals, or AICT supported journals, and all those things. And the findings of the research publications in this thing, in books, in open access journals, and making sure that will give much weightage for the research. Obviously, the consultancy also. And the extension activities to, apart from making the students to involve themselves in social movements, activities which promote their citizenship roles. If the institution starts here from the students, then only they will be able, even if they go out of the campuses, they will be able to do that social movements. Obviously, all the institutions should have NSS, NCAC, Youth Red Cross, Volunteer Blood Donation Club, Red Ribbon Club, and all those things, which gives one type of community services. And also, we should make sure that by proper properly guiding the students to employ themselves in an actions and activities for the society. Collaboration, the institution should have an industry collaboration or signing multiple MOUs for impart the knowledge for using the resources of the industries. Meanwhile, you can, for example, in civil engineering department will have a soil testing unit. They can use that unit for test the soils, and by connecting so many industries, they can conduct a test center there, or some test centers for so many activities. For example, in a physics department, they can go with start with so many testing faculties or testing facilities of electrical characteristics of a thin film, or other manufacturing of thin films with different combinations, or testing of waters by chemistry department or biochemistry department or biotechnology department. All these things can be made with by making a collaboration between the industry and institutions. Meanwhile, collaborating between other universities or other industries also supported here. The next one is called infrastructure and learning resources. The physical facilities, library resources, IT infrastructure, and maintaining the campus resources. So the adequate physical facilities available in the ambience of for the curricular design, extracurricular or administrative activities, facilities for academic developments of the institutions, annual budget provision for maintaining the academic support, and institution facilities for active academic participation for physically disabled students by providing necessary facilities. These are the physical facilities that comes under infrastructure and learning resources. And library management system, digital library plays a major role, and the institution should be connected with national knowledge network called InfiniBNet, and this plays a major role in evaluation also, that I'll explain later how this InfiniBNet is used in later stages, right? And using books, journals, and guiding all the informations, and ICT infrastructure, IT infrastructure using of all the ICT tools to make the students the learning an enjoyable one. And campus infrastructure, maintaining the campus infrastructure, regular maintenance, and the main regular maintenance. What comes here is maintaining the equipments, calibrating the equipments, sufficient funds for maintaining all the infrastructures inside the higher education institutions. And the next criteria is student support and progression. How our students are supported with different domains to progress for their higher education, progress for their student support and alumni engagement. Here comes the important role by the alumni. For example, if I entrepreneur, and if he is alumni entrepreneur, and he can give us some problems of his industry, so that can be solved by our students, or you can use their collaborative process. And for the student support, for providing this first thing, student support, providing all the scholarships given by the government and NGOs, or by providing by the management for providing free sheets for the students, those who are excel in sports or any other activities, and using that alumni for providing scholarship for the needy and deserving students. And here train coaching for coaching classes for competitive exams like UPSC, Public Service Commissions, SSC, all those things, UGC, NET exams and all, are giving them the career counseling, soft skill development. All these things are weighted here. or giving them, as I said earlier, right? When we are admitted students from rural, to bridge their knowledge, you can conduct bridge courses and value-added courses in relevant areas. When we are conducting value-added courses or bridge courses in relevant area, NAC accepts value-added courses or bridge courses if it is conducted for 30 hours. Anything below 30 hours is not considered as a course. And all the institutions is having with an placement cell, guidance cells, and grievance letter cells that we used to call as in woman cell, or harassment cells, or guidance cells for higher education, placement for getting a job and all. And on-campus interviews are for the student progression. Either they go for industry, or then incubation centers in the higher education institution will make them as a entrepreneur, or we have vertical growth in higher education and employment to be created, or whether the students go for higher education, doing higher education or research. This comes under student progression. And student participation in activities, irrespective, social justice to be provided for the students from SC, ST, OBC, and other economically weaker sections, and active participation of students in social and cultural and other activities, and makes them, the institution promotes a value-based education for inculcating social responsibility and good citizenships. And alumni association, which contributes significantly in the academic matters, student support, research, resource mobilization, both financial and non-financial. And mostly all the colleges, all the autonomous colleges, universities, they take care, they'll be taking the advice from the alumni in curricular design. Whereas the affiliated colleges can use their alumni expertise for providing their extra skills, which is not covered, or which is beyond the syllabus. That can be. And the next criteria is criteria 6, governance, leadership, and management, which gives you about the vision and mission of the institution, and strategic development and deployment, faculty empowerment strategies, financial management, resource mobilization, and internal quality assurance system, IQAS. So the vision, mission, and goals of the institutions are with which go which in capable manner of an higher education institution. The governance and institution practice decentralization and participatory management, and institution from a strategic planning and interacts with the stakeholders, and the institution grooms leaders at various levels. So each one of the institution, each one in that institution should take the responsibility for the upliftment of that particular institution. And feedback system, getting feedback from all the stakeholders, and it should have an well-defined quality policies. All decisions of the institutions are governed by management, facts, information, and objectives. And faculty empowerment says the government of India, state government policies on recruitment should be followed in case of access, equity, gender sensitivity, and physically disabled students. And it should have a welfare mechanism for teaching and non-teaching staff, autonomy to the academic departments, and enhance the competency of faculty and non-teaching staff. Financial management and resource mobilization. Institution and leadership takes initiative for mobilization of the resources. Most of the cases, all the resources comes under as the fees. And internal and external audits regularly. Institution maintains a reserve or corpus fund. The institution has adequate budgetary provisions for academic and administrative activities. All these things are explained in the governance. Then comes the the quality of education inside the campus. The academic audit should be done. The teaching learning process, structures, methodologies, and evaluations should be verified whether they are taken in periodic intervals and that sticks to the academic calendar provided at the beginning of the year. The last criteria, institutional values and best practices. Here we give the what are the best practices given in our institutions and what are the distinctiveness in our institution and what are the values and social responsibility we have. Here you can say the energy consumption, whether we are using solar energy or whether we are using wind energy, how the rainwater harvesting are there, how the waste recycling occurs here. The very huge hurdle inside any higher education institution is the waste management. Solid waste management, liquid waste management, the food waste management, biodegradable waste management, that if they are having an hostel and all, and apart from that, the e-waste. The very important thing is how to dispose an e-waste. So we should make sure that our institution should have all these things, eco-friendly activities, and it should not dump all the waste outside the campuses, making a concern for the society. So the institution should have a concern for social responsibility in its regular activities. And the best practices. Any two best practices of your institution can be explained here. For an example, I was being in an autonomous colleges where what I felt is which one is the best quality of our college is the college what is mean is Sri Ramakrishna College of Arts and Science, where we had introduced a concept of withdrawing from the examination. Anyone from autonomous colleges can try out this material, withdrawing from the examination of college. Unfortunately, if a very good learner or a learner, an average learner, fell sick during the examination, unfortunately, he met with an accident. In that cases, he cannot appear for the examinations, and if he appears in the next semester or next year, that will be marked as an reappearance. But for these genuine reasons, we given an option called withdraw from the examinations. He can withdraw from the entire semester and his next appearance will be calculated as the first appearance. This is applicable only one time in the entire program duration. And those students who are withdrawn from the examination will not be considered for ranking. This is one of the best innovative practice used in a college. Likewise, all the colleges, all the higher education institutions will have their own best practices. You can explain any two best practices which gives more concerned values for the students. Third thing. And what are the distinctiveness? What makes your institution stand apart from others that you can explain here? All these things are to be explained, and the NAC had so many qualitative metrics and quantitative metrics for exploring all the 7 criteria in that thing. Meanwhile, what are things we fail or we should take care is the parameters of NIRF ranking, National Institutional Ranking Framework. Every year, all the higher education institutions are supposed to go for this particular National Institutional Ranking Framework, where we'll be giving informations or data regarding teaching, learning and resources, research and professional practices, graduation outcomes, outreach and inclusivity, and perception. And we are given for every year. So when the data verification and validity takes care, they are cross-verifying all the data provided by us in the SSR with all the data that we have provided in NIRF. Similarly, they will be cross-verifying with All India Survey on Higher Education, IC code. So the first thing is, whenever we set the eligibility criteria, an institution which goes for NAC assessment accreditation should have an AISHE code. If they does not have any code, that institution will not be included for assessment. So the data verification and validation by the third party cross verifies the informations or the documents or the values what we had given in NIRF, AISHE, then ARIA ranking. You know what is ARIA ranking? Adult ranking for institution on incubation achievements. This directly gets connected with the third criteria called research consultancy. So they will be cross verifying all this thing. This is for an arts and science colleges. In case if that an engineering college that gone for NBA, again they will be cross verifying all the informations given to the NBA called vision, mission, and program educational objectives, program curriculum and teaching learning process, course outcomes and program outcomes, performance, faculty information and contribution, facilities and technical support, continuous improvement, first year academics, student support system, governance, institutional support, and financial resources. They will be cross verifying with NBA, NIRF, ARIA ranking, and AISHE ranking. All these things gets cross verified. These are all the uh, small summary of that thing. Curricular aspects, which allow 7 quantitative matrices and 2 qualitative matrices in case of university, and teaching learning process 18 quantitative matrices and 5 qualitative matrices, research 29 quantitative and 7 qualitative, infrastructure and learning resources 11 quantitative and 7 qualitative. Likewise it goes, which excludes student satisfaction survey. All these things, all the quantitative matrices will be verified online. System generates the score for all the quantitative matrices, whereas all the qualitative matrices will be analyzed by peer team. In this thing you can find the most part 70% of the matrices comes under quantitative matrix. All the quantitative matrices will be verified by system generated using data verification and validation. They will be cross verifying with NIRF, AISHE, ARIA, NBA, and other things where we have uploaded our information. So it is mandated that all the ranking frameworks or the coordinators for this thing should have a get a final consent from the IQAC, so that they will hold all the entire records provided for ARIA ranking, provided for AISHE, provided for NIRF ranking, provided data given for NB accreditation and all, so that they can consolidate for the 5 years and they can give it for the uh, assessment of NAC. Right, all the templates used in uploading the information is on Excel. That's only template and there is no changes and you cannot change anything there. It has to upload all the templates and matrices in the SSR will be in Excel. And these are all the things that we have to provide in the SSRs. First one is called executive summary. The executive summary gives you about the introductory note on about the institution, the location, the vision, mission, and the type of the institution. Then criterion-wise summary, brief each one of for 250 words, and a brief note on strength, weakness, opportunities, and challenges of the institution. Any other informations if the institution wants to share, and overall conclusive explication of the institution's function. And the entire executive summary should not exceed more than 5,000 words. And this is how the data will be. This is how the data will be. For an example, in the first criteria, the quantitative metrics will be percentage of students undertaking field projects or internship. This is quantified things. You'll be giving these many students have gone for this particular thing and their percentage. And each one should have an additional information that's given here, that list of programs and number of students taken the field projects and internship, and it will have a data template. You have to upload all these things in the data template. And this is how we are getting. And the institution here, this is qualitative matrices. This is qualitative matrices. Here you have to briefly explain how the institution integrates cross-cutting issues related to gender, environment, sustainability, human values, professional ethics into curriculum. You have to briefly explain them within 500 words. And for example, if you have an environmental engineering paper, you can add that as the uh, paper, and you can say the solar energy harvesting or professional ethics. If all these things included in the curriculum, you can give them as the list in the additional information. And quantitative metrics, they'll be asking the quantitative metrics for 5 years, or they may be asking for the average percentage, or they'll be asking that as in multiple choice. They'll be asking for the current year, or they'll be going for current year with a data ratio, or they may ask in yes or no. This is how the quantitative metrics will be asked in that SSR. For example, you can see here, right? How many programs, this is a percentage of programs where syllabus revisions was carried out during the 5 years. You can give, that's for 5 years. This is for quantitative metrics for the last 5 years. You can find out, and they're given a formula, and you have to give all the information. Next one is average percentage of last 5 years. It's average. The previous one is for the entire 5 years. This one is for average percentage of last 5 years data. This one is called multiple choice. This thing, feedback for design and review of curriculum, whether we are getting the feedback curriculum from students, teachers, employees, alumni, and parents. You can choose any one of that thing, and better to choose the maximum if you are getting the maximum. Anyhow, the autonomous colleges will have students in their board of studies, teachers in the board of studies. They'll be have employees or industry people. They'll have an alumni. So we'll get minimum of 4. So we can go with the value called A. And apart from this thing, you have to upload the information, how you collected the data, and how it is executed. What are the outcomes of this particular feedback, and how the outcomes of this feedback are taken care in the consecutive syllabus revision. And the next one is getting the percentage of data of the current year only. How many faculty members? This example, they are asking us how many number of teachers using ICT, and this gives only the quantitative values. And the ratio, mentee ratio, that's for only the current year. Earlier it was first they asked for 5 years, then they asked for average of 5 years, then they asked for the multiple choice question, then the previous example for the current year. Now they are going for current year with ratio. What are the ratio between mentor and these are the different types, how they are asking for the quantitative matrices. And the next one is yes or no questions. Availability of remote access to e-resources of the faculty, yes or no. It goes with whether you can say yes or no, and how you justify that. Again, this is for multiple choice question. What type of bandwidth that we uses? That qualitative matrices, you have to briefly give description in 500 words. There are so many qualitative matrices available in criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, and criteria 5, 6, 7 are all, most of them are all qualitative matrices. So you have to briefly write what the way we are doing and how we are explaining it. And the score calculations are the thing. All the qualitative matrices performance will be analyzed with peer team, that's called peer. It's given that as a peer. And remaining quantitative matrices that will be done by the system. So the calculation goes on. And here now the DVV process will be done in DVV process, deviation clarification from the higher education institutions. If we clarify the deviations in the DVV, then it goes for pre-qualified state of 30% of system generated score. And if it passed, then it goes for uh, PTV, peer team visits. This is how these things happen, DVV process. First one is the third party. They will be identifying the deviations, and the DVV submits the deviation reported and with queries to the higher education. Higher education submits the clarification and responses to DVV. DVV verifies the responses, and then the DVV recommends for data update. Then second level of verification, and DVV partner verifies the report and ensures the correctness. In that, if final DVV report and will be submitted for NAC. The meanwhile, sorry, meanwhile, the during the after submitting the SSR, the DVV process starts. Meanwhile, the student satisfaction survey also gets started. So the student satisfaction survey comes here. The institution will have to submit the entire database. The student satisfaction questionnaire will be mailed to all the students, and responses should be received from at least 10% of the student population or a minimum of 100. If the response rate is lower than the limits, this metric will not be taken up for evaluation. That means we'll be losing that 50 marks. That's in the criteria 2 of student feedback, 50 marks. So that's why I told you that we should make sure that the students are aware of what is the student satisfaction survey, what they'll be asking us, and what will be the outcome of this NAC score will enhance themselves. A student called graduating out of an institution with NAC score of A++, and competing with the students graduated from an institution with A, they can say that the quality of education is more with the higher rating. These things we have to make sure that the student aware all these informations with them. And this is how the student satisfaction survey process starts. Initiate the survey with 30% of the students. Send activation link to the students. Student log in and submit survey responses. In case the survey response is less, they will send survey requests to the remaining 70% of the students and process the survey for the higher education. In case, either in case of getting less, or if it is satisfies, it goes for the student satisfy matrix value. This is how the responses will be. The name of the college, so the name of the college itself shows you the ASHI ID. And the SSR submitted on 17. The total IAQA count was 478, and total students selected was 478, and the survey initiated on 13th, and that will be open for 10 days, and the percentage of response what they get is 48%. So this moves the next two stage. So this scores will be added, and if the response is around 8 or 5, this scores will not be included, so that what happens is we'll be losing the 50 marks. Meanwhile, when I say in the research and publication, if I'm giving that I had so many publications in my college name and all these things are get cross-verified with InfluBNet biobibliographic data feed, another third-party vendor. So the HA details will be sent to the InfluBNet. From there, they'll be calculating it, and they'll be generating the queries and send back to us. And we have to clarify, the higher education institution has to clarify these things and they clarifies and they compute the bibliometric values. So we should take utmost care in giving all the data in all the 7 criteria and even in the executive summary. We should make sure that all the values, quantitative matrices, what we are giving is having all the supportive documents. If there is no supportive documents, kindly avoid that particular information, giving that information to the in the SSR. Right. So this DVV and student satisfaction survey and infinite bibliometric data feed, all these things are executed simultaneously. So utmost care should be given. After that, we have to go for pre-qualified state. 30% of the qualitative metrics through the system generated score gets passed. Then within next 30 days, the peer team visits comes here to analyze, assess the qualitative metrics what we had given in that SSR. And uh, that peer team visit should be peer team visit fees as well as the 50% of fees should be paid here. Then only the peer team visits the campus. And for the peer team visit, the final stage of NAC assessment and accreditation is peer team visit. In the peer team visit, the NAC will not disclose the details of the visiting team, and higher education should not make any logistics for the visiting team. NAC will take care of all those things, and paying the TADA all will be done by the NAC. There won't be any financial transaction between the higher education institution and the visiting NAC. These are the, so this is one of the qualitative metrics. First part is the qualitative metrics, and the second part is the quantitative metrics. All the quantitative metrics will be verified by the system generated, and all the qualitative metrics will be verified by the peer team. This is how the quantitative and qualitative matrices marks will be, or 10 marks will be converted into the benchmark values between 0 to 4. Since the outcome, the final score will be between 0 to 4 only. This is the, again, I will go for the same process and assessment. First one is called IAQA. Whether after accepting IAQA, the very first stage will be IAQA. After accepting IAQA, we have to submit SSR in the next 45 days. In the next 45 days, DVV starts. After submission of SSR, DVV starts. It takes 30 days. Simultaneously, SSS student satisfaction survey starts. Then after successful completion of DVV and student satisfaction survey, it goes for pre-qualified state of 30%. And if it passed, you can go for 70% of quantitative metrics will be evaluated, and the remaining 30% in the qualitative metrics evaluation will be done by peer team visits and the student satisfaction survey. All these things will be added together, and that gives you the final grading. This is how the grading, this is how we'll be uploading the qualitative metrics and the quantitative metrics in the higher education portal dashboards. We'll be submitting for curricular aspects. This is the very first criteria in the NAC assessment. Here, very first one is called qualitative metrics, how the data enters. Here, the quantitative metrics, how we are entering the data, numbers, quantitative numbers, what we are entering it. And this is also the quantitative metrics, how we are giving the data, snapshots of this thing. This is called qualitative metrics, where a window will be there where you can type all the informations. It accepts the maximum number what we have specified. If it is 500 words, it will not allow you to add more. These are the templates. These templates are given in Excel, and we should use only these particular templates. We cannot change any one of these templates. This is the Excel template available. And optional metrics, some of the cases we can opt out some matrices, right? The all matrices and criteria 7 are essential, and some metrics can be um, non can be opted out. Right? That depends upon either the higher education institution is an university, or the higher education institution is an autonomous college, or a higher education institution is an affiliated college. The NAAC accreditation outcome will be in this pattern: peer team visit report, that's called qualitative metrics, statistical analysis of quantitative matrices, and which will provide you a grade sheet. Right. The peer team visits report will have these sessions: a general information, qualitative and descriptive analysis, overall analysis, and recommendation for quality enhancement of the institution. So this will be the assessment outcome of the peer team visit. And the system generated quality profile will give you the criteria wise data, of all the qualitative indicator framework. And then the next one is the grade card, which shows you what grade what we accept, whether it is A or A++, or B or C. So all these things we'll be getting it. The criteria wise analysis, it gives criteria wise it gives you the analysis of the report. Criteria wise you'll get the report where you can identify, and we'll get what are the high performance key indicators of our the higher institutions, what are the average performance, and what are the low performance, so that we can cross-check ourselves to enhance those average performance key indicators and the low performance key indicators. So this chart will be provided by the NAAC, and the graphical representation of strength weaknesses of the institution based on quantitative metrics for criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all those things. All this picture representation will be given by the NAAC, so that we can use this particular report, and we can self-analyze, and we can find out the areas to which we can add more. And the final grading pattern of NAAC will be, if it is above 3.51 till 4, it's called A++. 3.26 to 3.50, it's A+. 3.01 to 3.25 is A, and 2.76 to 3 is B++. 2.51 to 2.75 is B+, and 2.01 to 2.50 is B, and 1.51 to 2 is C, and anything below 1.5 is called not aggregated. And all the autonomous colleges are expected to score A. And in the funding section, all the higher education institution with score A or above will be considered, and all the autonomous institutions should have the accreditation of A to A++, A plus or A++. And this is how the national assessment and accreditation goes on. It's a very huge process, but this will ensure that the education at the higher education is having some quality. So it gives us the strength, gives us the weakness, that gives us the opportunities, that gives us the challenges, and what are the distinctness. You can self-analyze, the higher education institution can self-analyze what is my core strength and what is my weakness. How can I convert my opportunities into my strengths, and I come and convert my challenges into my strengths, and all those things. This is all about the NAAC assessment and preparation. I'm very happy to thank the management, principal, faculty team, and especially for the organizer of STTP of Amarjyoti College of Engineering for giving me an opportunity to share the knowledge what I'm having on NAAC assessment and preparation. And all these things, I have given a brief glimpse on the criteria of 1 to 7. In the afternoon session, Professor Dr. Deepa, Associate Professor, Department of Information Technology, Sri Ramakrishna College of arts and science will will give a detailed explanation of how all the 7 criteria goes and how to identify the strength, weakness, opportunities, threats, and each and every criteria, how to provide the values for quantitative matrices, what are the qualitative matrices, how to explain the qualitative matrices, and what are various things available in the executive summaries. All these things you can get a brief thing that comes as the preparation for NAC, how NAC data can be prepared and uploaded. So the kind of information for the all the participants of this uh, STTP is kindly make sure when you are going for NAC assessment and aggregation, make sure that you have all the details with you and give only the details without supporting documents for uploading in SSR. For an example, if you have an attended a program, but unfortunately you might have missed the certificate. So that doesn't mean that they are expecting us to upload the samples of the certificates of attending a faculty development program or a refresher program or orientation program. Unfortunately, if I misses the certificate of uh, a refresher program which I attended for 15 days, and if instead of that, if I upload my attendance certificate, they does not consider that, since the third party are not academic experts. Third party are not academic experts. They are just verifying the data whether it is there or not. Is this is the certificate? If not, okay, leave. They are not considering that whether the attendance certificate ensure that particular faculty has attended the orientation program or a refresher program. They are expecting they should upload only the relevant documents. And while giving the internship or projects or um, um, publications, make sure, for example, if faculty team of a particular department publish one paper and giving with 5 faculty members and giving that as count of 5, they doesn't accept it. They treat that as an one. Similarly, when the syllabus curriculum design in case of autonomous colleges, for the entire 5 years, they are treating the syllabus change of syllabus as only one. You can say that I have changed syllabus every year and every semester, but they are not considering it. They are considering that as change made in the curriculum is only once. And any other queries or any other questions I can answer there?
Sir, the queries are shared to your chat box. Sir, there's a link is shared. You can open it and you can find the question, sir. Sir, in the chat box, a Google Drive link is shared.
What is the purpose of regional accreditation? Regional accreditation, there's not. NAC stands for National Assessment and Accreditation Council. That doesn't comes under any regional accreditation. And all the regionals are state-wide government that supports the NAC ranking, NAC scores and all. Are the institutions expected to meet all accreditation standards at all times? I think it's maybe on NBA and NAC. That doesn't mean that all should have the accreditation standard at all times, but UGC and MHRD has mandated that by 2022, all the higher education institutions should be accredited with NAC. Irrespective of whether you are having accredited with NBA or some other things, you should make sure that all the institutions should be accredited with NAC by 2022. Can an institution which had a bad accreditation grade get a good rank and vice versa? And if I am taking it as an positivity, so that if I changes all my weaknesses into strength, obviously I can change my grade from bad one to very good one. But vice versa, it's mostly it will not happen if the higher education itself, institution itself tries, or if them something goes wrong in that particular way. And once you get a very good score, you'll be the standards are set, and if you're going with the same standards, obviously there won't be any uh, degrading. You can hold the same accreditation level. uh, Department percentage should be made. Yeah, yes, of course, when the uh, peer team visits comes, each and every department should have given the information about in the qualitative metrics. Of course, you have to show. And in to my what I like to tell you people is, if you feel that you can give the SWOT analysis of your department, or you can give the best practices given in your department, or what is the distinctness of your department, so that they can get impressed. So in the while peer team visits, all these things, informations or the presentation given by the department will make sure to get good marks. Obviously, the more valuable is NAC only. Difference between NBA accreditation and NAC. NAC accreditates for the entire higher education institution, whereas NBA accreditates each and every program of that particular institutions. And all the funding agencies, all the MHRD, all those things supports NAC. NBA accreditation is very good. I'm not degrading that NBA accreditation, but NAC has more value than the same question. Department presentation is a must or not? Of course, the department presentation is a must one. The question number 7 is an practical question or typical questions, right? See, the MHRD is MHRT and AICT and UGC are making sure that all the faculty members are paid salary with respect to their UGC regulation or AICT regulation. That's why they have asked the self-financing institutions to pay the salary through bank. And uh, but most of the cases, all the self-financing institutions are doing good. I'm not denying that some institutions are there which are not paying the salary as per UGC, but so far we have no board to regulate this particular faculty salary as per UGC or AICT. Either the regional governments, state governments, or central government should uh, make a board to regulate this particular thing. And faculties are like the foundation of the building, but none. The usage of NAC and NBA is to aggregate the institution. And obviously, when the NAC peer team visits or NBA team visits, they are asking us about the interaction with the faculty members. They are asking us to give the feedback of the institution, where we can give that where we can say that we are not, if we are not paid with the salary on par with UGC or AICT, but instead of explaining to the NAC or NBA, it's better to approach the management and convince the management to pay the salary as per UGC or AICT. I think that's all about the questions there.
Thank you, sir, for the response to the questions.
Okay.
On behalf of all the participants, I take this opportunity to thank our resource person, Dr. Sendil Kumarji, Principal of Aditya College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore. And we are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experiences with us on benefits of accreditation, SSR submission procedures, academic flexibility, and different criteria levels required for NAC accreditation. Sir, we were pleased to have your session in this STTP, and we thank you for your valuable contribution. Also, I wish to thank all the participants for joining the session. Now we move to the end of today's session. Next session will start by 2 p.m. And dear participants, kindly note that the link for attendance and feedback of the session has been shared in the Zoom chat box. Once again, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.